picture this. It's mid-June of 2007. Windows Vista had released a few months ago, and there were rumors about Apple's upcoming version of macOS. Well, it's WWDC, and you actually watched the conference. It goes as normal. Steve Jobs introduces macOS 10.5 Leopard, except there's one more thing. Okay, that's pretty normal. It's about Safari, and Steve Jobs says that he wants the Apple browser to conquer a larger market share. His plan for doing this? To release the browser on Windows. That day, Apple released the beta version of Safari 3.0 onto their website for download. So let's see what it's like. I don't need to go into too much history here because, well, I've literally gone through the main point. I mean, if I wanted to, I could go through, like, just say Apple was founded in, like, 1976 or something, and then they introduced the Mac in 1984, struggled in the 90s, and for a time period, Internet Explorer was the default browser on the Mac, as per a deal that was made between Apple and Microsoft. Because the fact that at the time, both of them were not in that good of a position. One had survived, like, a particularly nasty financial hell and almost went bankrupt, while the other was about to get hit by some pretty big lawsuits from the US federal government. In 2003, this deal ended, so Apple made their own web browser called Safari, which was packaged with the Mac. There's not really too much to report home about over the next 4 years, and that leads me to the opening of this video. So, I've got Windows Vista here. As you can see here, it wanted to connect to Apple's start page thingy, but this computer is not connected to the internet because, as I mentioned, this is basically a fresh install of Windows Vista. And you can see here, this is Safari version 3.0.0. You're probably wondering why this isn't version 1.0, and that's because of the fact that Apple reasons. When Apple releases one of their software products onto Windows, it's usually, and the version number on Windows is usually keeps conformity with the one on the Apple release, to put it simply. And I think we should go for a few modern sites this time to see how well this browser holds up. Probably very terribly. But also because of the fact that I was having issues with the Internet Archive when I was recording this, so as you can see, Google doesn't look like it's doing well. Also, take note here, this browser uses Aqua elements on Windows, which is honestly a bit surreal. But did you know that it could have almost happened? I say this because if you look at the Windows XP visual styles from beta builds, you'll notice a theme called Candy, which looks a bit like macOS. That side note aside, let's keep going. Scratch seems to run quite well, which is a bit of a nice surprise. However, this is the version of the site that is the older version that hasn't been updated since, I don't know how long, at least 2015. This is Wikimedia Commons modern day page being loaded on this browser. Its CSS doesn't seem to work. Cool. One site that seems to load quite well is Reddit. However, I will mention here, I'm using the old .reddit.com version, which is a version of Reddit that is officially maintained that pretty much gives you the old school UI. It's kind of cool, and all you need to do on the web version is basically just replace www with old in the domain. I can't give this a clean 100% okay mark, but it's like Scratch, it's quite usable. I then wanted to see if I could load a wiki page for my favorite Pokemon, except it couldn't load. As you can see, Apple's site is clearly loading just fine. It really is. But I mean, hey, what do you expect for Apple's pretty advanced website on an Apple browser from like the days of Windows Vista? How about we get some more websites onto here and see what older websites look like? By the way, yes, we do have tabs, if you're curious. They appeared as early as Netscape Navigator 7. But Google's site from 2001 looks just fine. Apple's site looks mostly okay. And we got some particularly kind of basic websites that one of them is not intended for Apple Safari, as you can tell. But we have bookmarks, which can be added with this button with a plus icon. And we have something called collections, which basically showcases a lot of different things. There's also private browsing, which is useless because we are on no Wi-Fi. And then we can also view the source of a website. But that's generally going to summarize this browser. Overall, it's not that bad. It's got quite a few features going for it for the time. And well, I feel like this footnote in Apple history that doesn't seem to get covered as much is worth talking about quite a bit. I'm probably going to cover the last version of Safari that Apple made for Windows in the near future, or probably whenever I get around to it. But overall, for a beta of an application that was only on Windows for like around 5 years, this isn't that bad.